Hello fellow model builders, I am the European scale modeler, and today we are going to build that nice Revell kit in scale 1 to 720. Just like the real ship, the heavy cruiser of the Hipper class, this model did not have an easy life, as we will see in this video. But just like the real ship, we do not want to forget it, and together we will see how I finished building this old lady. I begin by assembling the hull. With the help of Tamiya extra thin cement, this goes forward as usual, even though the fit was not perfect. Still, for experienced hands, this can be handled fairly quickly. Using extra thin cement is the best choice here, because due to its consistency, the glue almost flows into all the small gaps on its own. With a bit of pressure afterward, everything can be welded together properly. Especially in this scale, I found this to be extremely helpful. Even though it may not look like it here, I have to admit that assembling this kit took quite a long time. Due to the small size, a lot of fine control is required. With so many small contours and details, using cement can easily lead to glue spreading, and if you accidentally touch it, details can be lost and may need to be corrected later by sanding. Unfortunately, the hull has some quite sharp edges. Only a small part of the sanding process is shown here, as most of it was done off camera. I am fairly satisfied with the results, even though it could have been improved further with putty. After this is done, we immediately start preparing the first deck structures and the superstructure. I begin with the funnel and then move directly on to the 4 rangefinders of the secondary guns. Unfortunately, I did not record how I installed the hanger section shown here in the instructions. As you can see later on, part of the hanger was unfortunately damaged by me while removing it from the sprue. After laying everything out, I start assembling the bridge section piece by piece and glue it together using extra thin cement. With good preparation, this can be done quite quickly. After that, I can place the bridge behind the forward turrets. Now I improvise a solution for the broken hanger using a thin piece of leftover sprue. In this case, I was actually very happy about an imperfect mold. Thanks to this, combined with an unhealthy amount of cement, I am very happy with the result. Now I attach the launch platform for the reconnaissance aircraft, followed by the final deck parts of the superstructure. Because Germans are known for being very precise, it explains itself that I had a lot of fun attaching the rangefinders on the deck. Since I am already talking about fun, we cannot skip some complicated over-engineering. Due to missing parts in the kit, the funnel needs a solution to close this black hole. With the help of my Zippo and some leftover sprue, improvised rods are quickly made and installed using an unhealthy amount of cement and the last of my remaining patience.
One eternity later.
My grandfather would probably be proud of me. With the highest precision, the mast is now built and placed into position. Since we are talking about precision, I was a bit worried that the deck planking was no longer visible after 2 layers of paint. I decided to rescribe it with a scalpel, although using a ruler would have been the better choice, as we can see. I was very happy that only a few parts were left at this point. These were attached using once again an unhealthy amount of cement and patience. With the main assembly done, we can now prepare for the first painting stage. These small clips are very useful for this, and buying them was absolutely worth it. Since it is winter, I have to work indoors. To avoid dying from potentially carcinogenic particles attacking my lungs, I of course put on my mask before priming all parts with Vallejo Hobby Paint Primer. After everything has dried, I can airbrush the deck using Tamiya XF78 mixed with X20A thinner in a ratio of 70:30. Using the same thinning ratio, I now apply XF19 to the superstructure and the first small parts. Like the frog in biology class back in school, I fix the deck to my table and mask off everything that should not be painted with XF19. Now I quickly mask the waterline using 2mm masking tape and can paint the lower hull using XF9 and XF7 mixed in a ratio of 70:30. This time I did not forget the 30% thinner, which makes me very happy. To give the deck a good look, I use Tamiya Panel Liner Brown not only as a classic panel liner, but also as a filter. Instead of applying a large amount and waiting for it to dry before removing the excess, I slowly work the wash in as a filter until I am satisfied with the effect. This took about 15 minutes, but since I want to show the process, I let it run at 6 times speed. Using XF1, I give the funnel its well-deserved black color. For the upper part of the hull, as well as parts of the upper deck and the superstructure, I use XF18 and XF19 in a ratio of about 80:20 to achieve a bluish-grey tone. It is important to know that due to the thickness of the paint layers, there is a noticeable difference between airbrushing and brush painting, as done here on the deck. My rather modest hand painting skills with a fine brush are also put to the test when working on the small deck structures. Now we return to the horror of removing masking tape. Thanks to the good primer, no paint lifted, but unfortunately some paint did creep under the tape, which calls for a bit of touch-up work later. Even though there is still a lot to do, I decided to loosely assemble everything once to get a first impression of the ship in all his glory. Now I want to fix the waterline. When painting by hand, this is only possible with masking tape. Unfortunately, some paint also leaked through here, which means I need touch-ups for the touch-ups. The paint was mixed quickly and everything was fixed. The small differences you can still see will disappear later during weathering. On the upper deck, we continue fixing small missing areas using XF19. The fine work continues on the lifeboats and smaller boats using XF18. The reconnaissance aircraft is also painted by hand using XF65, and we politely ignore the wings, which are far too short and blocky. Using XF64, I give the boats a dark wooden look. The searchlights are painted with XF16 to make them shine. The same color is also used for the cockpit of the aircraft. For the barrels of the secondary guns, I use X10, and XF1 is for the details on the top side of them. To perfectly prepare everything for weathering, I mix X22 with X20A in a ratio of 50:50 and apply a gloss clear coat to all parts. Thanks to capillary action, Tamiya Panel Liner Black becomes my best friend for bringing out the details on the hull, the deck and the superstructure. Only on the deck did I remove the excess using a bit of white spirit. Even though this process basically removes the panel liner again from the hull, I decided to be a bit brave and try oil dot filtering. For this, I apply various dots across the surface. I use oil paints from ABT, in my case intense blue, light grey, faded white, neutral grey, and titanium white. After this is prepared, I carefully go over the surface with a brush slightly dampened with white spirit and pull everything downward in vertical motions. With this method, you work section by section and can always add new dots or remove paint partially or completely using white spirit. As you see, I did exact that because I had the feeling to have a bit too much color at the hull, so I removed some of my work and added new white dots. In the end, my goal is to create a slightly uneven surface and a subtle variation in color across the entire hull. As a final touch, I now use dry brushing with white, grey and black oil paints to create highlights on all parts, especially along the rather sharp edges, and to add more definition and depth to all the small details. With the dry brushing technique, even the smallest edges will catch a bit of paint, which can create very nice effects. No one should be afraid to try this, especially since everything can be removed again with white spirit if needed. Now all that is left to do is to remove a small amount of excess paint using a cotton swab lightly dampened with white spirit, so that dark areas do not become light and light areas do not become dark. Now I drill the holes in the deck and superstructure for the final phase of the build. First, I place the forward guns into position and secure them with cement. Once again, I must apologize to the fans of movable parts, to whom this sight surely brings deep sorrow. Now only a few steps remain, which I leave uncommented for relaxed viewing before we come to the final step of the build. The final step of assembly naturally brings some small problem, but thanks to super glue, this is quickly resolved. Now I seal the model with Tamiya Flat Clear XF86 to protect everything and give it a matte finish. Now we finally see the finished model. In keeping with its tragic history, I sadly have to say that I was quite disappointed with the kit itself, especially its overall quality. Even though it is an old mold, it does not excuse the amount of fixing required or the poor fit of some parts, such as the hanger. Most of these corrections were done off camera. I do not recommend this model for beginners, as the build can be very frustrating without proper tools and experience that, in my point of view, is needed to give that kit a good shape. However, I am quite satisfied with the final result. I did notice that the scale 1 to 700 is still something I need to get used to. I rate this model with 4.5 out of 10 EU stars. Thank you very much for watching. I would really appreciate comments, the occasional like, and of course a subscription. And as always, stay committed and stick together, if necessary, even with super glue. With nice greetings, your European scale modeler, and see you next time.